Democratic leaders have started efforts to try to remove Pedro Espada Jr. from the party. But this is actually just the latest attack on the controversial Senate Majority Leader, who is mired in a handful of scandals and potential legal troubles. Now, among the first people to push for Espada's ouster is my next guest. Bill Samuels is a former lieutenant governor candidate who has now turned his full attention toward removing Espada from office. Bill, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Liz.
Okay, so today I mean the Political Action Committee that you've created, the New Roosevelt Democrats, the New Roosevelt Initiative, if I will, sorry, has endorsed Gustavo Rivera. He is one of several primary candidates after Espada. Why?
Well, number one, he is going to be an outstanding progressive voice in the state Senate, assuming we elect him. Espada never should have been accepted back into the Democratic Party. It was a huge mistake. He's an embarrassment to the state. But it's important not only that we beat him, but we put a new young man like Gustavo, who's been 11 years as a top professor, worked for Senator Gillibrand, is articulate, and more importantly, he is totally up to speed on all of the reform issues. I believe that he, like Dan Squadron, will emerge very quickly as a progressive state senator. Not a progressive Latino state senator, but an actual leader in the state Senate.
Okay,
We're very excited about his candidacy.
Bill, there are a couple of people actually who've already announced their candidacy against Espada. One of them is Desiree Pilgrim Hunter, also a Democrat. Why not let the voters choose? I mean, why ask for everyone to coalesce around a guy that you happen to like?
Well, I'll tell you why. This is not a time to be a politician, whether it be in the district or, in my case, running for lieutenant governor. Espada has a base vote somewhere between 25 and 33%, no matter what you do. If there are 4 candidates, which there are today, this man, who's very perseverant, articulate, and smart, but a crook, could be reelected. So while Pilgrim Hunter, I think, has done an excellent job in the community, would be a very decent state senator, I don't think she's as strong a candidate, and I urge her to drop out in the interest of upgrading the state Senate and getting rid of Espada.
What are your thoughts on this effort by the state Democratic officials to disenroll Pedro Espada from the party, to kick him right out?
Well, let's state I have no idea whether legally it will work. It probably won't. But it's about time that the state party stepped up under the leadership of Jay Jacobs, who I think is an outstanding state chairman. I'm glad that they're attempting to do something. We should not have accepted in the majority Espada back, so I applaud the move, but I don't necessarily think it's going to work. We got to beat him in the polls.
Okay, but Bill, if in fact the Democrats had not accepted Espada back, then they would be in the minority now. Now, you could argue that they would at least be running cleanly, and they would not have Espada hanging around their necks. They would have been able to hang him on to the Republicans, but you really would have relegated them back to the minority for the remainder of this year in that budget fight that we just saw that's not even over yet?
Absolutely. I think the public is absolutely disgusted with votes being based on member items, which is what Espada wanted. It should have been a no-brainer. And the reason we're backing not just Gustavo, but there are 7 outstanding upstate women candidates that are culture changers. We elect new progressive to the state Senate. Never again, even if it meant we were in the minority, would we take a crook literally back into in order to be in the majority. Absolutely wrong decision. Shouldn't have done it.
Okay, well, I'm sure that John Sampson, have you had this conversation with John Sampson, the Democratic Conference Leader of the Senate?
Well, I know John Sampson, and we've agreed to disagree, and a lot of my good friends, every single Democrat voted for bringing Espada back. We have a difference of opinion, and I think the voters would have appreciated and had more confidence in our party if we had just been straight arrows and called it the way we should have, based on moral grounds.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point. There was never actually a formal vote. I believe that the vote was to make Senate president, Malcolm Smith, president, who then himself unilaterally picked Pedro Espada to be majority leader. They split that position. Joe Bruno used to have both of those titles, specifically because they did not want anybody on the record as voting in favor of Pedro Espada, which is a little bit of a tricky piece of business. In terms of what...
Ridiculous maneuver.
Ridiculous. Do you think you're going to start right away, if I'm not mistaken? You're having people leaflet right today in Pedro Espada's district?
Yes, we are not just raising money, and I will be having a fundraiser with Mayor Robert Duffy, Carl McCall, and Dennis Meehl on the 21st for the Roosevelt Initiative. We actually put field people out 2 weeks ago with 2 buses of young Democrats. We went up to Espada's non-district home in Westchester. We petitioned and stood in front of his house. This man has got to be beaten, and we're going to do it by putting foot soldiers in the district and ousting him.
That's interesting.
Starting today.
That's interesting that Bob Duffy is going to be at this fundraiser. Actually, a number of past lieutenant governor candidates are going to be there also, if I'm not mistaken, or at least
yes.
a past lieutenant governor and a past governor, Dennis Meehl and Carl McCall, who ran in 2002 against Pataki, and also Cuomo was on the ticket, Andrew Cuomo at that time. So since Bob Duffy is running for lieutenant governor and he is Andrew Cuomo's hand-picked running mate, are we to assume then that the fact that he's appearing at your fundraiser means that Andrew Cuomo is sort of tacitly approving of your effort?
I'll let you draw that conclusion. I will tell you that once I made the decision to emphasize being an activist versus a politician, I reached out for Duffy for a lot of reasons. One, it showed goodwill. But more important, Duffy's going to be president of the Senate. I was thrilled that he said yes. I had dinner with him last night. We went over not only the Espada race, but the Senate races that are occurring in Rochester with Robin Wilt and Mary Wilmot. And it's important to me, if we want change, that Duffy does a lot of the things that I would have done if I'd been in the same job, and I think he will.
What is exactly, how much effort do you believe that Andrew Cuomo and Bob Duffy are going to put into the Senate, the battle for control of the Senate this fall? Because as you'll recall, and you, I believe, raised money for the Senate Democrats during this period, Eliot Spitzer, really, the root of his problem with Joe Bruno was that he was so aggressive in trying to flip the Senate into the hands of the Democrats. And this situation seems to be potentially volatile. If you're not successful, and Andrew Cuomo is successful as governor, and he has to work with a GOP majority in the Senate, it could be quite problematic.
Well, it could be. I don't believe there is any chance of the Republicans regaining control. They don't have the bench that they should have. Frankly, our performance has not been what it should be, and if they had a stronger bench, they could win. But we've done an in-depth analysis. The Democrats are going to win. The question is, do we increase our majority, and are the new people we put in progressives like Gustavo Rivera or Mary Wilmot upstate, or some of the other women candidates? So I think it's easier for Cuomo and Duffy to be involved. I think it's less risky. And frankly, if he wants to be just another governor, don't get involved. If Andrew Cuomo wants to be a historic governor, and I believe he does, then it's going to be worth their effort to spend a lot of time in this election increasing our majority. And I think Jay Jacobs' move earlier this week, Duffy coming to our fundraiser, are indications that the Cuomo campaign wants to elect more progressives. How much they'll do, you'll have to talk to Andrew.
But actually, Andrew Cuomo isn't talking like a progressive. He's